Today we're crawling through trash in the hope of finding gaming treasure in a mountain of rotting retro. It's the smelliest episode yet. It's time for a retro road trip. Hello Cave Dwellers, this is no ordinary road trip today because we've hired a van to get us through it. It's not just me and my car like I normally do, and we are expecting to come back today with some heavy retro, so a tail lift was essential. And what would be even better would be if we had one that actually worked. But thankfully that was easily fixed through the use of my own body weight, and less than a minute into the episode we've already fixed something. I can sense this is going to be a good day today. Today is a huge unknown for Holly, Richard and I, because we're going to visit a container that hasn't been opened in over 10 years. The owner, Mike, knows he put some really cool things in there and things that would help both the cave and the arcade archive museums. It went in good condition over 10 years ago, but what it looks like now is absolutely anyone's guess. There is one item though that didn't get put in the container, so we've got a double leg today. And the first part of this is a 50-mile journey northeast from the cave, and we're going to the offices of a company called Fuse Technologies. Fuse is a company that teaches kids how to code using a Nintendo Switch and their own Fuse 4 basic software, which is in the Nintendo eShop if you wanted to give it a go. We interviewed John, the founder, some years back, and the company's gone from strength to strength, and it's Fuse that have been looking after our first pickup. We are off to a really good start because we did have an Outrun cabinet on loan in the arcade. It had to go back, and now we can fill the gap with this, which is a larger one than the one we had. This is an upright deluxe model, and it's one of my all-time favourite arcade games, and I know it's Richard's too, so we are delighted to have this back in the collection. Its condition is fair. I'm talking about Outrun, not Richard or Holly. We'll give it a makeover to replace things like the missing steering wheel badge in the centre. That should have the prancing horse. You might notice there are some chunky, slightly rusty bolts where there should be slim security screws, and there are a few bit cracks and things like that on the plastics, but I've seen Outruns in much worse condition. This is absolutely awesome. I did decide to check inside before we moved it though, and I'm glad I did because the game board is in the power supply. Yeah, this is a recipe for disaster. The game board should be mounted to the side of the cabinet. It should be screwed on there, but for some reason it's just flopping around in the bottom. So we will want to secure that before we load it up or take it out. Fuse kindly took the time to show us around their offices, including their own retro corner, which they used to inspire the kids between coding lessons. And I took a sneaky look at the whiteboard so I could see what they'd been learning recently. And I had a nose through their cabinets at things like their Neo Geo, their Turbo Graphics, which is here. There's lots of Nintendo stuff in the cabinets as well, which is sure to inspire the kids, as well as an Amstrad GX 4000. Now, that's what I call a motivational console, right? That'll get the kids interested. And there's lots more besides in here, which I'd love to stop and play with, but we've got a really busy day ahead of us. So the cabinet was made ready for moving, and then the sack truck groaned under the weight of this huge, heavy cabinet, and we very carefully guided it down the stairs and towards the van. Collection 1 is complete, and now it's on to the mystery storage container, which is another 50 miles east in Bedfordshire. it's that part of the episode where I say a big thank you to PCBWay.com for supporting the channel. If you're working on your own project and you need PCB manufacturing, 3D printing, CNC work and much more besides, then PCBWay.com is the place to go. And while you're there, make sure you check out their shared project section, which is just rammed full of projects to support vintage hardware. It's well worth a look. Thank you, PCBWay.com. Mike was waiting for us on arrival with his son Luke, and Mike was pretty nervous about what was waiting here. He didn't fill the container himself back in the day. He hired someone many years ago to put all of his things in there, and now he's ready to sift through his old memories and clear the container with our help. As we made our way into the site, we could see that these looked like pretty standard containers. We weren't sure if they had any kind of lining in them to prevent condensation, how much was inside Mike's container, or how much we actually might be going home with today. There was only one way to find out.
So full. Oh, it is.
Oh my god.
Well, the weird thing is that furniture isn't mine.
And on opening the container, it was a shock to us, but it was also a shock to Mike, because it seems like the people who loaded this up for him also threw in a bunch of someone else's stuff that they just needed to offload, and a decade later, they're long gone. It dawned on us at this point, we really have our work cut out for us. This container couldn't be any more full if it tried. And we needed some motivation, and thankfully at this point it did come as we peered into the depths of the container and we saw a glimpse at the back right there. You can see the words Operation Wolf on the side of a cabinet. There's an unidentifiable cabinet to the left of it, and then as we looked on the right hand side below the workbench here, we could see the side art of what looks like a distinctive Atari arcade. And that's just what's visible to us now. So we were hopeful at this point that if we empty the container, there might be some really cool surprises, and it's well worth rolling our sleeves up and getting stuck in, so let's go. Things seemed okay at first, and you might have noticed the container is not lined, it's just the metal of the container. There's nothing to stop condensation forming, and there would have been large temperature swings inside this metal tomb. And we didn't have to dig too far into it to find the first signs of mold. This is really concerning for those wooden arcade cabinets further back that we're trying to reach. Has the mold made its way into them? The first cabinet within touching distance as we dig through this is actually a gambling machine. It's JPM's Hangman, which was a quiz game. And it's not looking good. I can already see rust around the metalwork of the cabinet. Oh, that is nasty. It's not just arcades we're hoping to find here though. Mike thinks systems as old as his original Commodore Plus 4 are hiding in here, and his gaming past from pretty much every generation of computer and console since then. It's just a question of finding them. Or how about a NatWest piggy bank? The first console game to show up in here is World Cup USA 94. Not the most exciting, I'll admit, but it is evidence that there is perhaps more to come if we persevere. This is more like it. Time Crisis 2 and the gun in the box. It was probably brand new when it went in here, and it is as good as new inside. And what's hiding under this rug? By sheer luck, I came across a set of keys for the Outrun cabinet. Now, admittedly, all of the doors were already open on Outrun, so it was no big deal. We could get into it. But I bet someone's been looking for these. Before long, we'd got as far as that Atari arcade cabinet on the right, and it turns out it is Atari Street Fighter II Champion Edition. What on earth is going on there? I can see rust, I can see damp, and I can see mold. This is concerning, to say the least. And it's a similar story as we edge closer to Operation Wolf. I can see mold on that too. And it looks to be an American import. This is the full-sized cabinet, which is much bigger than the one we had in the UK. And my goodness, I hope we can save that, because that's such a special looking cabinet with that artwork. We'll get to the arcades in a moment, because by this point, we'd nearly got everything outside from the container, and it was an opportunity to sift through all of it and salvage anything that we could. And there was no logical order to how things had been packed and stored in here, which meant a fingertip search of every single bag, every single box, Every box in every box and every bag in every bag. There was so much to get through here, and we just had to get our heads down and get on with it. We came across lots of games, especially Xbox and Xbox 360 games, and this was just one of many sports bags filled with them, and they were in good condition inside the bag, thankfully. Aside from the arcade cabinets, we did also strike gold with some of the arcade boards hidden in here. Richard found this box, which is damp on the outside, but inside it looks to be in great condition, and on closer inspection this board is Konami's Track and Field, a real classic, and it is a cabinet that we have in the arcade archive, so it's really useful to have another board for it. Richard found another box with another PCB in here. It's Capcom branded. Confusingly, it has Way of the Tiger written on it in permanent marker. Now I know there was a home micro game by that name, but I'm not aware of a Capcom arcade called Way of the Tiger. My best guess is that this might be Black Tiger, which was a game from 1987, a great little game, and in time we will test that out. Also in that box was a bootleg of Bubble Bobble. And then we found this box, which looks like Track and Field again, but it's actually the sequel, Hyper Sports, which came out a year after the original in 1984. And it had a slightly sorry looking battery on that one, so we did whip that off because it looked a bit funky. Holly and Richard are happy to have found some arcade PCBs, and I carried on digging. I found this X arcade stick, which was one of the better home arcade sticks, looking a bit rough around the edges and a bit rusty, but that might clean up. It's only a matter of time in any clearance job before you find a giant Sports Direct mug.
There has to be a Sports Direct Big Mug.
And an old mouse nest. Just because your container is sealed, it doesn't mean you don't have mice or rats living in there. I bet there are parts of arcade cabinet used in the making of this nest. The next box was an absolutely brilliant find by Richard because it's going to help us with a problem he's been having and trying to fix for some time now. Inside it is a stack of Operation Wolf boards. Our cabinet has crunchy speech in the game. Everything else works fine, but not the speech.
Oh, that's what I was looking for. That's the sound. That's the mouse drum for the sound effects. I've only got one of those. That's the
Well,
one.
there's plenty of them.
Yeah. Oh, great! Look at that. Yeah, I think that's what's wrong with ours because I've been replacing all around here, and I think all that's fine now on ours. But I think that's the thing.
Okay. More. I mean, it's a bit crusty, but at least you can get the bits.
Yeah. God, that is a lot of Operation Wolves.
We couldn't have hoped for a better box of PCBs to find because it's exactly what we need. This Xbox packaging looked like a lost cause, but when I grabbed it I realised it wasn't empty. So we had a look, and hiding inside was an absolutely mint condition Xbox. That looks brand new. I must really induct the Xbox into the museum. We don't have any out on display yet. Then we found some dinosaurs. A whole family of them. These apparently are Pleos, which were a robotic dinosaur released in 2007 by the co-creator of the Furby. Maybe they saw the mice off for us. Thanks, lads. This box revealed some nice finds. These are Atari 2600 games with their original packaging. There was a Sinclair portable TV. And we found the back end of Optimus Prime. Believe me, I looked really hard for the front, but this was all we could find. I'm sure it'll make someone happy. Someone like Richard. Vinyl records are always worth flicking through, you never know what you might find. Highlights included the smouldering Engelbert Humperdinck, A Man Without Love, and Joseph Seal playing familiar favourites on his magnificent organ. I'm getting sidetracked here. We were getting to the end of the boxes and the bags that we'd pulled out now, but a few gems were still turning up. A promotional game for the PSP, and buried underneath all of this rubbish, a perfectly good Commodore tape deck. I'm glad nobody stepped on that. Richard found a Neo Geo Pocket game in this bag, and another called Electroplankton for the DS. That's a 2006 game. So we've got games ranging from the VCS in the 1970s all the way through to the Xbox 360 so far. It's totally unpredictable what's going to fall out of the next bag. This board we found we think is Namco's Point Blank 2, and it looks brand new. The first in the series of these games I spent a fortune on while in college. The second I've not played so much, but it's incredible how new this looks. How does something so clean come out of this container? I don't know, but I'm not complaining. This PS1 looks good, and I don't have one of those in the collection, so that's another gap filled. There's another minty Xbox there for the pile. Everything that we find that we think's worth keeping we're putting on the workbench over here to separate it from all the other rubbish. And by evening we'd found all sorts, from the Atari Jaguar and a Mega Drive 2 to those arcade PCBs in the box there. You'll also spot as I walk around a Sega Dreamcast, various Xboxes and 360s. Over here in this box are more Xboxes, and there were 3, 4, maybe even 5 Commodore Plus 4s found, as well as joysticks and power supplies for them. There were quite a few cassette games and manuals that turned up, some beers just 15 years out of date, a nice little Hitachi TV, and so much more. You can see what's on the table there. And it's great to save all of this stuff, of course, but this would have fit in my car. We bought the van with us for a reason, and that of course is those arcade machines. So it was time, with a lot of intrepidation, to find out just how bad they might be and to tackle them. We reminded ourselves for motivation that we do at least have Outrun in the van, and if that hadn't been loaned to Mike's friend, that too would have been in this container.
Oh, that's not stuff as well. Okay.
Keep going round.
Feel solid?
Keep going all the way round.
The first cabinet we moved was the nearest to the front of the container, and that was Hangman. Despite the damp, it could still support its own weight, but you can see the cracks in it and the water damage that's got to it.
Where are you going with it?
The usual. Winner. Right, you
thought they'd take out tickets, not slots.
Loading.
Right, we're on.
See the rust on the metalwork here, and the way the sides have swollen because of all of the moisture that's got into them. This is not a good sign of what's to come, surely. I'm really worried about those other cabs now seeing this. It's not a machine that I think we would have installed in our museums, as we focus on video games and not gambling machines. But there would be useful parts in here. The monitor tube, for example, could be really useful for another game. Regardless, we promised Mike that we'd help him to get these out of the way. So into the van it goes. Next we'll look at Atari Street Fighter 2. Yeah, we can see similar signs here. Rusty metalwork, water damage. And now I can see the control panel. We can see that originally this was a Marble Madness, which is a brilliant game and one that we'd love to have in the museum. So if there's anything at all we can salvage from this, we will. A nice surprise in here is 2 new old stock trackballs. They will come in handy. But inside you can see the mould and the moisture has well and truly set in. It's so sad to see it in this state. There's no game board inside. We're not sure what happened to the game board. But deep inside I reached in and I did find the original marquee. So I pulled that out, and there was also another very rusty control panel in there. At this stage, we're already starting to have conversations amongst ourselves now about what parts can and can't be saved if the cabinet itself is no longer structurally sound. If it can be saved, or even if it could be used as a template to create a new cabinet and save other parts to use with that, like bezels, speaker grills, control panels, then that's what we'll have to do. Until we can dry them out, get them back, tear them down and inspect them, we can't say for certain what we can save, but I know the feeling amongst us is this Marble Madness is one that we really want to save, and we will go to great lengths if there is any possibility of saving it. We'll do everything we can. And if nothing else, I hope that if anyone else out there is watching this who is storing some classic cabinets in a similar way, I hope they might be encouraged just to go and open the door and check up on them before it's too late. Mike was really quite sad to see that the systems that in his mind were still in the shape that he put them in there 10 years ago. But the container has not been kind to him at all.
Yeah, I have had. That actually for a start. Is there anything in it?
Barely.
Power supply.
Much else. What's that second load at the front? That's just the point.
Yeah.
And it gets worse, I'm afraid to say. This is another gambling machine. It's the Crystal Maze, and it is just falling to bits. It's so rotten.
Oh wow, we've actually got it.
Right. Yeah, I'll bring the bottom. Oh god, that is stuck to the floor.
Oh, look at where the floor, isn't it?
Get that one on the bed.
Yeah. Let's go. We'll go from there.
It's even trying to be helpful and flat pack itself.
Go on. Crystalline.
It's had its last Crystal Maze challenge.
How many plays? Cash in £72,595.
At this point, we are of course extremely worried about Operation Wolf, which is next in line. They seem to be getting damper and mouldier with each cabinet as we go into the container, and well, as expected, Operation Wolf is just horrible.
I'm just glad you didn't store the 10 game boards in it.
Yeah. The suitcase power supply will come back actually. Look at that.
Okay, well, so the thing we learned about that one is...
Let's get the monitor out this one.
No, I think
No,
we need to...
it's going to collapse and run neck.
Oh no! Oh god.
We can see here now that the final game next to Operation Wolf is Gauntlet, another favourite of both mine and Richard's. And we decided we would move that first to give Operation Wolf more room to collapse if it has to. Gauntlet has a pretty good looking monitor inside, but no monitor chassis, and it's so close to necking itself on the cabinet. The metal tension bands have also come off of it, which is part of the implosion protection, so we need to be really careful with this as we move it.
It's going to have to go out the back. So you like to come out the front.
Can I not lift it? Oh no.
No, because then you'll hit the bezel here.
It's a polo!
Okay, it's free, it's free.
Yeah.
Yay! Oh, we saved something.
Actually, it doesn't look to be too bad. With the tube salvaged, and it really doesn't look to be too bad actually, we could use that. We then fetch the cabinet.
Oh, front's nice.
Oh,
thank
God.
Front's looking
You
nice.
might have to push. They've got a grip on
Okay, it's still a bit wet and damp at the bottom, but the front is nice.
Oh, my God.
This side isn't bad.
Yeah, because it's in the middle, we've done alright with this one.
Interestingly, it's not perfect, but there is hope for this cabinet. It seems to have evaded the same amount of moisture that the others had. And just look at the PCB inside, that looks brand new. Somehow, fate was on our side with this cabinet, and a restoration effort might just be possible for this Gauntlet. We have a Gauntlet 2 on loan in the arcade. I would love to see Gauntlet 1 next to Gauntlet 2, both looking pristine with the chance to try out both games and see the difference. And so to Operation Wolf. That side art is so cool. It would have been a really dominant, impressive cabinet in an arcade when it was new. And it would be really dominant now for all the wrong reasons. Again, we'll salvage what we can from it. For example, Richard here is taking out the mirrored glass. The monitor sits low down in the cabinet and you view the game through a mirror. So we really want to save that. It is so rotten. Other parts that could be salvaged could include the gun. We could perhaps sandblast that, powder coat it and make it look like new. And there are parts that we can use as templates, but I really think this cabinet is too far gone.
I reckon that's the structural weight. The glass is actually making it. It is. Okay, go steady. 6 inches, and you're about to touch, and you're on, and you're down.
All that was left to do now was to load up the van and help Mike sort through the rest to decide what he's keeping and what's rubbish. What we do take, we'll inventory, clean and help Mike to value before he decides on what he donates or sells to the museums. It's been a long day and a lot of hard work for everyone, not least Mike, who I think it's fair to say was more than a little heartbroken by some of the items. They went into storage during a big upheaval in his life and with the best of intentions. But between us, we'll make sure plenty of good still comes out of this. And of course, there was Outrun. I'm off to scrub myself for several days in the shower now, and what can be enjoyed, what is fit for human consumption, will be put on display, and you can come and enjoy it by visiting yourself. So check out retrocollective.co.uk to book a visit to come and visit. Also have a look at our electronics and merch stores while you're there. And if you want to help us with our preservation efforts, please head to patreon.com/RMC Retro to support the channel and everything I do. I hope you've enjoyed digging through the trash with me today. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Guys.